It's a WrestleRide with Mike, and I want to talk about things I've learned from wrestling. Yes, life lessons, believe it or not, from professional wrestling. And you might be wondering, what the fuck can you learn from wrestling? A lot. You know, if you really pay attention to the subtext, and I'm not talking about actual maneuvers or collar and elbow tie-ups or anything like that, but just life. So the first anecdote I want to share is a life lesson I learned from Arn Anderson's book. Arn Anderson had in like 1997 kind of like a self-published or some fucking published book, and I think you can still find it. And in fact, I had a recent copy recently, and Arn's book, he's talking about his early career, and I think he's in, I want to say like Tennessee or Florida, like the Florida fucking wrestling that Arn was doing at the time. And basically the shtick goes, he was in the gym, and Paul Orndorff was somehow in the same gym, and I don't even know if they wrestled for the same federation or if Orndorff was a huge star with either it was like Georgia or he was with WWF, and just Orndorff and Arn happened to be in the same fucking gym, and Orndorff was, you know, kind of a bigger star at the time than Arn, and of course Orndorff had that great physique back then, and something to the effect of, you know, Arn either asked Orndorff for advice or Orndorff just volunteered the advice. You know, I think Orndorff volunteered the advice, and the simple advice that Orndorff said to Arn was, keep your body in shape, pay your bills, pay your taxes, and they can't deny you. They can't deny you, is what Paul Orndorff said to Arn Anderson. And if you really look at that advice, that doesn't just apply to wrestlers. That's something any guy or woman can take, which is you pay your taxes, you pay your bills, you get your body in shape, and they can't deny you. So just think about that. That's good life advice right there, from Paul Orndorff to Arn Anderson. Okay. Now I've kind of taken that little advice and I put a spin on it, which is don't be denied. And you can look at Mike Messier website and find the don't be denied story. But basically what I say, don't be denied to anybody. It's just a kind of a thing where, hey man, we don't have a lot of time on this earth. You think you do, but you don't. So don't be denied. If you have a goal, if you have whatever the fuck, an ambition, don't let these assholes and these schmucks hold you down. Whether they're in your family, your friends, your enemies, your frenemies, which is the fucking worst. But don't be denied. Second story. The second story. Well, the second story, it's like I'm kind of forgetting the second story. I'm remembering the third story, but the stories had an order to them. So I guess I'll just go right into the third story and hope I remember the fucking second story. I'm losing momentum. Another Steve Austin thing, okay? So basically, Steve Austin is watching just this past year, January 3rd, Tokyo Dome, Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega. And Steve Austin, I'm getting all fucked up, but basically Austin is watching this thing of Jericho versus Omega, and he says to himself, and he tells Chris Jericho this later on a podcast clip I heard. He says there was a moment, I think this is what Austin said, but maybe I'm adding my own 2 cents, but I think there was a part in the match where they're fighting on the outside, and like Jericho grabs the referee, or he grabs the young boy, and he puts the fucking young boy in the walls of Jericho. And Austin said to Jericho, or about Jericho at that moment, you were free. You were Brian Pillman. You were free. And what I think Austin was saying, and I'm going to give you my interpretation of what Steve Austin said to fucking Chris Jericho about the Kenny Omega match, and referencing his, former tag team partner, Flying Brian Pillman. I think what was saying, the way I interpreted it was, had Pillman lived, that this is something Pillman would have done, is basically it. Like, if Pillman had, been with us all this time, and, the chronological years are a little bit off, because, of course, Jericho was a few years younger than Pillman, but something to the effect of, this is something that Pillman would have done, and you are doing it. You are living, to Chris Jericho, you are living this type of wild dream that Brian Pillman would have really enjoyed had he been in that match or in that situation of, jumping promotions and this unexpected angle that kind of started with the Twitter fucks and everything else. So that's a good life story. The third story I'm remembering, which is another Stone Cold Steve Austin story, which Big Van Vader, of all people, was counseling Stone Cold Steve Austin. And apparently they were in some European bar in 1993, WCW, and Austin was having, a round of contract negotiations that weren't going terribly well with WCW at the time. This is 92, 93, I guess, and really getting upset about it. And Vader, Big Leon, as they call him, said to Steve Austin, Austin was basically going to tear up the contract and leave without having anywhere else to go professionally. And Vader said to Steve, don't you do that. Don't you do that right now. Always let a cooler head prevail. Always let a cooler head prevail. Now you can look up that video clip, and it's just, Steve Austin talks about Vader, and he just tells that let a cooler head prevail anecdote, which I pretty much told it too, but it's his fucking story. So those are 3 life lessons, and they all kind of just came to me that, as a wrestling fan, it's easy to get very agitated by wrestling. Sometimes you watch this stuff and it aggravates you, the political climate of wrestling right now, or the creative, or the fucking this, that, or the other. So there's a lot of things to be angry about with pro wrestling. However, that's not to say that you can't learn these lessons, these life lessons and these anecdotes. And, why do I share this? I guess just because I do. I mean, it's just because, like, when you're talking to your buddies, and maybe you guys do this, maybe you don't, but when we're dealing with our own schmaltz, our own shtick, and you kind of say, hey, well, it's like this, what such and such said to such and such, then you guys who are watching this understand that. You get it. Which is, there are some life lessons in the world of professional wrestling, even for the fucking fans. And, like, there was some fucking thing online where Eric Bischoff, of all people, was going after some fucking fan, or some fan was going after fucking Bischoff about the term smart mark, and they got into a whole thing. Of course, I had to chime in with my bullshit, but it was just a schmaltz where I think, some fucking another video. I'm going to make another video about the topic that I just got spurred onto, because this video pretty much is what it is. I'm going to make another immediate video. Alright, thanks for watching. Your pal, MikeMessier.com, WrestleRides with Mike, talking about wrestling fucking anecdotes.